Hello class. Today I will be presenting to you the fundamentals of green projects as part of Module 2. Before we can go any further, we need to define a green project and what makes it different from a normal project. Given this is a course leading to the GPM-B exam, let's look at how they qualify a project to be sustainable using standards. A wise mentor of mine once said, "Standards let the world understand each other," and I believe her. Another way to think of standards is like the dictionary of project management. If you don't all agree on what terms mean and how you calculate quantities, you can't possibly communicate results effectively. The majority of standards we will be covering today come from ISO, the International Organization for Standardization. So imagine you are a rich inventor trying to save the planet, and this entrepreneur comes up and says, "I have this great idea for a company, and it's going to be completely sustainable, carbon neutral, and human focused." Without standards, you have to ask, well, what do you mean by sustainable? How are you calculating your carbon footprint? Human focused meaning what? Education, health, they're all celebrities. You end up talking to this famous fictional character Humpty Dumpty, who talks in terms only he understands, which leads to communication breakdowns, as you can see in this comic. The GPM Practice Guide refers to 12 categories of standards, each relating to a separate but equally important aspect of a product or system. Here are those 12 groups of standards: sustainability reporting, circular economy, sustainable procurement, environmental management systems, energy management systems, social responsibility, occupational health and safety, anti-bribery, sustainable development in communities, quality management, asset management, and risk and opportunity management. Not every business or project needs to fill out and have paperwork for every applicable standard, but being aware of these areas and understanding how they each have an impact on the sustainable triple bottom line is key. First and most obvious, the sustainability reporting standards. There are a number of different reporting standards available, including the European Sustainability Reporting Standards, International Financial Reporting Standards, Global Reporting Initiative, Sustainability Accounting Standards Board, and Task Force on Nature-Related Financial Disclosures. All of these seek to answer very similar questions. How are you sustainable? How do you measure your sustainability? How do you record your finances? How do you record your social impact? Your economic impact? How about your environmental impact? Some of these standards, such as the ESRS, are mandated by the European Union or by its country members. All of this amounts to the difference between saying you're sustainable and being able to prove it. The next group refers to the circular economy, including ISO 59004, 59010, and 59020. These documents all refer to the concept of a circular economy rather than a linear economy, and help business owners and managers with the transition from one to the other. The goal is to be sustainable, resource efficient, and to minimize the amount of waste you produce. These help companies to define their boundaries, such as where they take responsibility and where it is another company's responsibility, how they reclaim their materials and divert them from being disposed of improperly. This next group is sustainable procurement, also sometimes called sustainable supply chain management. It's referred to in ISO 20400. It asks questions like, how do you pick where you source your materials from? Where do you get your materials? How do you know that your materials are what they say they are? How do you determine where you get your materials from? How do they get the raw materials to make the materials you're using? All of these procurement questions help enforce the idea that you have to take control of what you're taking in so that you can be sustainable within your processes. Next, consider the Environmental Management Strategies standards, part of the ISO 14000 family. These ask questions about how you pollute your environment, how you comply with environmental regulations, and how you reduce the amount of waste. The ISO 14000 family has over a dozen standards, each referring to different specialized topics such as air, water, soil, waste, and other environmental impacts a company can have. Next is the energy management system standards, such as ISO 50001. These ask questions like, how much energy do you use? What is your energy goal? How do you reduce the amount of energy you use and how much energy you waste in a given time period? How do you make decisions to have more energy efficient systems in place at your operation? All of these standards follow the PDCA management standard, so all of these are designed to be continuously improving. Now consider your social responsibility with ISO 26000. This goes beyond what you are doing within the company and how you take responsibility for the company's actions. Social responsibility is key because it impacts how you deal with your environment, your employees, your community, your customers, all of the externalities that an organization works with. Having a positive impact is important to be sustainable. Having a negative impact means that you aren't supplying what you are taking from it. Next, the Occupational Health and Safety Management Standards in ISO 45001. These ask questions about what safeguards are in place to protect workers, who is in charge of maintaining these safety systems and how they're checked, making sure that they're legally compliant, and setting up what happens if a worker does get injured. An important thing to note is that a safe facility is a sustainable facility. Injuries are wasteful, not to mention hazardous to employees. Eliminating waste through safety is a win-win. Next is the anti-bribery management standards of ISO 37001. This asks questions about how you prevent bribery from happening, how you handle when employees are offered bribes and how they report those offers, how you prevent employees from bribing others, what the consequences for bribery are, and how you respond to other supply chain members being exposed to bribery. This doesn't immediately sound like something related to sustainability, but you have to understand that all of these sustainable projects are built on trust. Having bribery in the system means that there's a potential for corruption, and which means that there may be hidden waste or impacts that aren't being considered. Sustainable development in communities, such as ISO 37101. The goal of these standards is to not only develop a sustainable practice within your organization, but to help spread the word about sustainability and improve the overall community. This might mean benefiting others, this might mean teaching them about sustainability, it might mean helping the environment in your area. The goal is that sustainability is a group effort and you are doing your part to help others join in. Quality management, the ISO 9000 family. This is a very famous branch of ISO standards as it deals with things like the quality of production, efficiency of production, how you generate value, how you eliminate faults, and how you optimize your output. This is all key to green development because reducing waste is fundamentally important to sustainability. If you can reduce how much you need, that means that there will be more available later. Asset management, ISO 55000, 55001, and 55002. All of these have to do with how a company manages the assets that they have, how they're acquired, how they're used, how individuals are trained to use it, how they're maintained, and finally how they're disposed of at the end. It's important to note that this includes not just physical assets like machines and equipment, but also workers, as they are an important part of maintaining sustainability. It's also important that all of these processes are recorded and can be audited if necessary. Finally, risk and opportunity management in ISO 31000. This has to deal with how you identify risks in a project. how you catalog the risks and understand both their impact and the probability of them happening. It also has to deal with how you mitigate the risks or how you try to prevent them from occurring in the first place. And if a risk does occur, what response procedures are in place? And above all, how else do you deal with opportunities? Often consider the positive type of risk instead of a negative impact. Sustainable projects have to make sure that they understand risks not just relevant to the program, but to the environment and the people around them. Here are the references that I used for this presentation. Now that we've discussed these standards and how they are so crucial to sustainable project management, here's a couple questions to consider. 1. Which standards do you think have the greatest impact on a company's overall sustainability? 2. If you are managing a sustainable startup, which standard certifications would you pursue first, if any, and which would you prefer to leave for later? And 3. Do you think having certifications and standards actually improves the real sustainability of a company?